Hello and welcome to the channel. Today we'll be looking at the deadliest knockouts in MMA history. Knockouts are delivered in different forms, either through a knee, elbow, punch, or through a slam. In MMA, a KO is declared when a fighter loses consciousness, but after receiving a legal strike. A knockout will be declared even if a fighter loses consciousness for a few minutes and then gets back to fighting. Number 1. Quinton Jackson and Chuck Liddell. The multi-talented Quinton Jackson laid a smooth knockout on Chuck Liddell just 1 minute after the first round began. Quinton Jackson is a multi-talented individual and has done exceptionally well in two industries, acting and MMA. He is a professional wrestler, and as of recent, he bagged a Bellator MMA. Chuck Liddell is now a former MMA fighter, under the category of light heavyweight champion. Liddell tucks up to 23 fights in the UFC. Liddell is among the individuals credited for propelling MMA into the mainstream of America entertainment and sports. Number 2. James Irvin and Terry Martin. Irvin competed professionally between the years spanning 2003 and 2012. He's also a former WEC heavyweight champion and has flexed his muscles at the Strikeforce, KSW, Bellator, and UFC. The MMA professional once made history UFC 54 by delivering a powerful knockout to Terry Martin. In the second round of the fight, both combatants met in the middle, but James was rather brutal because he delivered a flying kick that sent Terry Martin to oblivion. Terry Martin has recently competed in the middleweight category. He has competed in King of the Cage, Affliction, Strikeforce, the MFC, and Adrenaline MMA. Number 3. Mauricio Shogun Rua and Lyoto Machida. Defeat is not a word in the vocabulary that sits well with Lyoto Machida, and his fight with Mauricio Shogun Rua proved just that. With the match set for UFC 113 in Montreal, Canada, Rua had to pull out his best card and regain his glory after losing the first fight that consisted of 5 rounds to Lyoto Machida. Lyoto Machida's undefeated record was broken after Rua came attacking with his hands instead of kicks. Rua's new strategy was more than perfect because he successfully knocked out Machida halfway through the first round. Number 4. Lyoto Machida and Rashad Evans. Nothing amazes fans more than two undefeated champions getting into the ring together for a title fight. Machida was able to defend his title in the first round by successfully putting Evans down. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to pull through. At this point, he knew he had to come back stronger, so he coined a fighting style that no one could understand, and even his opponent Evans wasn't able to figure out what was happening and didn't know what to expect. This strategy led him to win his second victory that successfully concluded with a knockout. Number 5. Scott Smith and Pete Sell. Every fighter has a unique style of fighting. Scott Smith is known to compete in the middleweight division. He is one tough individual with hands that are dreaded by most fighters. Pete Sell, on the other hand, is a hard puncher, and he proved this after serving a retiring shot at Scott Smith. This blow sent Smith in so much pain that it was visibly clear the fight had ended. But as it turned out, Sell had underestimated Scott Smith, and when he pulled himself to his wounded opponent, he was cocksure the win was his. Unfortunately, Scott wasn't going to take things lying down, so he gathered himself, and minus the pain, he plastered a heavy blow on Pete's face, rendering him unconscious. Number 6. Yves Edwards and Josh Thompson. Yves Edwards has built quite a reputation for himself as an experienced lightweight in the global space. Thompson, on the other hand, was a newcomer with an undefeated track record. Both fighters were thrown into the ring at the UFC 49. Many fans expected Edward to finish the fight, given his finishing abilities. Thompson's fans were also optimistic, expecting to initiate his defensive abilities and retain his winning streak. The fighters traded strikes and takedowns during the first round. None of the players gained an advantage, until Edward took it upon himself to study his opponent. After anticipating Thompson's maneuver, he went airborne and delivered a hard head kick on Thompson's side of the head that ended in a knockout. Number 7. BJ Penn and Caol Uno. If you want to watch the shortest knockout fights, then you need to find BJ Penn. Though young at 23, BJ Penn is determined to set the record, which he had already done through the 2 consecutive wins over UFC lightweights. BJ Penn was matched up with Caol Uno, and in as little as 11 seconds into the first round, the fight was over as Penn quickly knocked out Uno. Number 8. Vitor Belfort and Wanderlei Silva. How do you think a fighter feels when he takes down a dreaded opponent? Well, no one can explain the feeling better than Vitor Belfort. The 21-year-old Brazilian left a "I was here" mark at the UFC after delivering a less anticipated knockout to his ferocious opponent, Wanderlei Silva. Taking down Wanderlei shouldn't have come as a surprise given that Vitor had initially fought good fighters, the likes of Tank Abbott, Randy Couture, and Tra Telegram. Number 9. Gary Goodridge and Paul Herrera. Nothing is as disappointing as a good match coming to an end. Big Daddy Gary Goodridge treated his fans to a few explosive minutes of a match that left his supporters yearning for more. Gary Goodridge did not have a chance at Herrera, especially after Herrera was seen drilling a fireman carry over and over. Herrera had a healthy fighting reputation, as he had wrestled in college, thus the experience counts for something. What Herrera's camp didn't know is that Goodridge had spent the whole night in his room, practicing the crucifix, and that is how he sent Herrera to oblivion in as little as 13 seconds. Number 10. Anderson Silva and Rich Franklin. Rich Franklin is famous, and has over time been known as a UFC Hall of Fame. Anderson Silva, on the other hand, was popular only by the hardcore fans, and most people didn't know that he was quite skilled. Rich Franklin's fans at the UFC 64 underestimated him, up until he wrecked Rich Franklin. He placed against the cage and delivered knee after knee kick that rendered him senseless in addition to breaking his nose. Once on the ring at the UFC 64, Silva moves fast in putting his fighting skills into use, and that's probably what made him win against his opponent. Number 11. Shonie Carter and Matt Serra. A spinning back fist is all that Shonie Carter needed to trump his opponent, Matt Serra. Interestingly is that Shonie had warned Serra that he would pull his spinning blowout, but he thought he was bluffing. As the games began, Matt gave his fans an explosive performance as he was constantly winning. Shonie, on the other hand, had to take the win, so he had to lure his opponent, but let him feel like he dominated the game. 10 seconds until the fight was over, Shonie pulled his promise and delivered a spinning back fist with a knockout on the New York champ. Number 12. Phil Baroni and Dave Menn. A good match is one that ends early, and no one knows that better than Phil Baroni. The UFC 39 pit Phil Baroni against Dave Menn. Of the two, Baroni was the fans' favorite, as he had only lost one fight while heading to this game. Menn, on the other hand, was known for having extensive cage experience, and was followed by a not-so-good title after losing his last UFC match. And just like the fighter's reputation, their fates had been sealed with regards to their history. And in as little as 1 second, Baroni pumped some serious punches, just 1 second that rendered Dave Menn unconscious. Number 13. Gabriel Gonzaga and Mirko Cro Cop. History is always made whenever a powerful player is beaten, and that's what happened at the UFC 70. Mirko Cro Cop is known for delivering head kicks that also guarantee him a win over his opponents. Despite having such a colorful winning reputation, Mirko Cro Cop was beaten senseless by Gabriel Gonzaga. The knockout was delivered through a kick on the head. This devastating head kick was the start of a series of downfalls for the Pride fighter. Number 14. Rashad Evans and Sean Salmon. It's interesting how one knockout can open a series of knockouts in a fighter's career, and how a win can result in a series of wins for a particular player. Rashad Evans had a long fighting career before being pit against Sean Salmon, and while he had thrown a couple of head kicks when engaging in the various fights, he hadn't had one that gave him a victory. Sean Salmon is no beginner in MMA. He's an intimidating opponent with a history of wrestling. The UFC 8 was the deciding fight between Rashad and Sean, and just as expected, Rashad delivered the much-awaited knockout, which opened a series of knockouts for Salmon. Number 15. Mike Russow and Todd Duffy. Todd Duffy's previous fight had seen him deliver a knockout in as little as 7 seconds. His physique spoke on his behalf. He had an athletic look and looks powerful. Russow doesn't have as much up his sleeve, and he even had much support from the oddmakers than from the fans. As the match began, Duffy fulfilled his fans' expectations. Now, given that the winning odds did not favor Russow, he had to come up with a strategy that would see him win. So when the game moved on to the third round, Duffy had been compromised, as he was visibly tired. Additionally, he made the mistake of moving closer to Russow, who simply coined 1-2 combinations and delivered them to Duffy's temple, immediately sending him into oblivion. Thanks for watching.